What if the reason some people struggle to build friendships has nothing to do with bad luck? What if it has nothing to do with being unattractive, unsuccessful, or different? What if the answer lies in a handful of personality traits that quietly shape the way people connect with others? Most people assume friendships happen naturally. You meet someone, you get along, you become friends. Simple. But human relationships are rarely that simple, because friendships are not built only on proximity. They are built on trust, comfort, emotional safety, reciprocity, and the ability to make other people feel valued. When those elements are missing, friendships often struggle to develop, no matter how intelligent, talented, or interesting a person might be. Now, before we begin, it's important to understand something. Having few or no friends does not automatically mean there is something wrong with someone. Some people genuinely prefer solitude. Some are rebuilding after betrayal. Some are focused on personal goals. Some are simply in a season of life where friendships are limited. That's completely different. Today, we're talking about people who repeatedly struggle to create meaningful friendships, despite wanting them. People who often feel lonely, disconnected, or confused about why relationships never seem to last. And surprisingly, psychology suggests that certain personality patterns appear again and again in these situations. The first personality trait is excessive self-protection. At first, this trait doesn't seem negative at all. In fact, it often develops for understandable reasons: past betrayals, rejection, bullying, abandonment, broken trust. Experiences like these teach people to become careful, cautious, guarded. And while caution can be healthy, excessive self-protection creates an invisible wall. The person wants connection, but they also fear connection. They want friendship, but they fear vulnerability. They want to be understood, but they hesitate to reveal themselves. Imagine trying to become friends with someone who never shares anything personal, never expresses feelings, never opens up, never allows others to see who they really are. At first, they may seem mysterious, but over time, they become difficult to connect with, because friendship requires emotional access, not complete exposure, not oversharing, but enough openness to create trust. People often assume trust comes before vulnerability. In reality, vulnerability is often what creates trust. Small acts of honesty, small moments of openness, small glimpses into someone's authentic self. These moments build connection. Without them, relationships remain stuck at the surface. Many highly guarded individuals don't realize they're sending mixed signals. Their words say, "I want friends," but their behavior says, "Stay back." Others sense this contradiction and eventually stop trying. The tragedy is that the person isn't rejecting friendship, they're protecting themselves. Yet, the result looks exactly the same: loneliness, isolation, distance. What's fascinating is that many people who struggle with friendships aren't lacking social skills. They're lacking emotional safety. They never learned how to feel secure enough to let people in. And until that changes, every potential friendship faces the same obstacle: the wall. A wall built to prevent pain, but one that also prevents connection. The second personality trait is chronic negativity. Now, this doesn't mean someone occasionally complains. Everyone complains sometimes. Everyone has bad days. Everyone vents. That's normal. Chronic negativity is different. It becomes a lens through which a person sees everything. Every opportunity has a problem. Every situation has a downside. Every conversation eventually becomes pessimistic. Every piece of good news is met with skepticism. At first, people often respond with empathy. They listen, support, encourage, offer solutions. But over time, something changes. Emotional energy begins draining. Because human beings naturally gravitate toward environments that feel emotionally balanced. Friendships thrive when people feel uplifted, understood, and emotionally safe. Constant negativity creates the opposite effect. People begin associating interactions with emotional exhaustion, not because they dislike the person, because they feel depleted after spending time with them. This creates a painful cycle. The negative person notices others pulling away. This reinforces feelings of rejection. The rejection creates more negativity, which causes even more distance. And the cycle continues. What's interesting is that chronic negativity often hides deeper emotions: fear, disappointment, hopelessness, low self-worth, unresolved hurt. Many negative people aren't trying to push others away. They're expressing pain. The problem is that pain expressed constantly without balance becomes difficult for relationships to sustain. People want authenticity, but they also need emotional variety: hope, humor, curiosity, optimism. Without those elements, friendship begins feeling more like emotional labor than mutual connection. The third personality trait is excessive self-focus. This one can be difficult to recognize because it doesn't always appear as arrogance. In fact, it often appears as insecurity. Many people assume self-focused individuals spend all day talking about how amazing they are. Sometimes they do, but more often, excessive self-focus shows up differently. The conversation always returns to them: their problems, their experiences, their feelings, their opinions, their struggles, their achievements, their worries. Even when listening, they're often waiting for their turn to speak, waiting to relate everything back to themselves. Friendship depends on mutual curiosity, the ability to genuinely care about another person's inner world, their experiences, their dreams, their fears, their stories. When curiosity disappears, relationships become unbalanced. People feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. Imagine sharing something meaningful and noticing the other person immediately shifts the focus back to themselves. Once might be understandable, twice might be accidental, but repeated consistently, it creates emotional distance. People naturally move toward those who make them feel valued. And feeling valued often comes from being listened to, truly listened to, not interrupted, not redirected, not overshadowed. One of the most powerful social skills in existence is genuine interest, the ability to make another person feel like their thoughts matter, their experiences matter, their feelings matter. Without that skill, friendships struggle to grow. Because everyone wants connection, but very few people want relationships where they feel invisible. Now here's where things become even more interesting. The next personality trait often hides behind good intentions. Many people who possess it believe they're helping others, protecting themselves, or simply being honest. Yet without realizing it, this trait quietly damages potential friendships before they ever have a chance to fully develop. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. The fourth personality trait is being overly judgmental. At first glance, this trait can look like high standards, strong values, good discernment. And sometimes it is. But there is a line between healthy judgment and excessive judgment, a line many people cross without realizing it. Overly judgmental individuals often evaluate people quickly, very quickly. A single mistake becomes a character flaw. A different opinion becomes a reason for distrust. An awkward moment becomes proof that someone isn't worth knowing. Instead of allowing relationships time to develop, they make decisions prematurely. They place people into categories: reliable, unreliable, smart, foolish, interesting, boring, worthwhile, not worthwhile. The problem is that human beings are far more complicated than first impressions. Everyone has awkward moments, bad days, immature reactions, unfortunate mistakes, moments they regret. If friendship required perfection, nobody would have friends. Yet overly judgmental people often expect standards they themselves would struggle to meet. What's particularly interesting is that harsh judgment is frequently rooted in fear. Fear of disappointment, fear of betrayal, fear of wasting time, fear of being hurt. The person believes they're protecting themselves by identifying flaws early, but in reality, they may be eliminating potential friendships before they ever have a chance to grow. Think about the people you trust most. Were they perfect when you met them? Probably not. You learned about them gradually. You saw strengths, weaknesses, good qualities, flaws, and over time, trust developed. Friendships require room for imperfection, room for growth, room for mistakes. Without that room, relationships become impossible to maintain because everyone eventually disappoints us in some way. Everyone. The strongest friendships are not built on flawless behavior. They're built on understanding, patience, forgiveness, and realistic expectations. Overly judgmental people often struggle with these things, not because they're bad people, because they expect certainty before trust, and friendship rarely works that way. The irony is that many judgmental individuals desperately want meaningful connections, yet their constant evaluation prevents those connections from forming. People sense when they're being judged, even if nothing is said. Body language changes, conversations become cautious, authenticity disappears, and without authenticity, friendship struggles to survive. The fifth personality trait is emotional unavailability. This may be the most important trait on this list, because friendship is, at its core, an emotional relationship. Not necessarily romantic, but emotional. People become friends because they share experiences, trust, support, understanding, memories, vulnerability. Emotional availability is what makes all of that possible. When someone is emotionally unavailable, connection remains limited. Conversations stay surface level. Feelings remain hidden. Personal struggles remain private. Emotional needs remain unspoken. The relationship never fully develops because one person never fully participates. What's fascinating is that emotional unavailability doesn't always look distant. Sometimes emotionally unavailable people are social, funny, outgoing, even charismatic. They can talk for hours, attend events, make people laugh, tell stories. Yet when conversations become personal, they retreat. When vulnerability appears, they change the subject. When emotions arise, they become uncomfortable. It's as though an invisible barrier suddenly appears. Others may enjoy spending time with them, but deeper friendships struggle to form because emotional intimacy requires emotional presence. Without it, relationships stay shallow. Imagine trying to build a bridge where one side never reaches the other. No matter how much effort is invested, the connection remains incomplete. That's often what emotional unavailability feels like. The person may genuinely want close friendships, yet their behavior prevents closeness from developing. Many emotionally unavailable people don't realize they're doing this. Some learned early in life that emotions were unsafe. Others were taught to suppress vulnerability. Some experienced betrayal that convinced them opening up was dangerous. Others became so independent they stopped relying on anyone. Whatever the reason, the result is often the same: loneliness. Not because people reject them, because people cannot connect with parts of them they never see. And this brings us to something extremely important. Notice that none of the 5 traits we've discussed involve intelligence, success, appearance, education, talent, money, status. That's because friendship rarely depends on those things. People often assume friendships are determined by external qualities. Psychology suggests something different. Relationships are usually shaped by emotional qualities: trustworthiness, warmth, curiosity, openness, empathy, reliability, the ability to make others feel comfortable, the ability to make others feel valued, the ability to create emotional safety. When these qualities are present, friendships often flourish. When they are absent, friendships often struggle. This explains something many people find confusing: why someone can be incredibly intelligent yet lonely, why someone can be successful yet isolated, why someone can be talented yet disconnected. External achievements attract attention, but emotional qualities create relationships, and that's a crucial distinction. Now here's where many people make a mistake. They hear discussions like this and assume these personality traits are permanent, fixed, unchangeable. But personality patterns are not life sentences. They're habits, tendencies, learned behaviors, And learned behaviors can be changed. The guarded person can learn vulnerability. The negative person can learn balance. The self-focused person can learn curiosity. The judgmental person can learn patience. The emotionally unavailable person can learn openness. None of these transformations happen overnight, but they happen every day, all over the world. Some of the most socially connected people today were once deeply isolated. Some of the warmest people were once emotionally distant. Some of the most trusting individuals were once extremely guarded. Growth is possible, but growth begins with awareness. And awareness is often uncomfortable because it requires honesty. Honesty about patterns. Honesty about habits. Honesty about behaviors that may be contributing to loneliness. Most people prefer simple explanations. Nobody understands me. People are fake. Friendships aren't worth it. Sometimes those explanations contain truth, but sometimes they hide a more difficult reality. The possibility that certain behaviors are unintentionally pushing people away. And that's not something most people enjoy hearing, yet it can be incredibly empowering. Because if your loneliness is caused entirely by external forces, you have little control. But if your behavior plays a role, even a small one, then change becomes possible. Control becomes possible. Improvement becomes possible. And that's good news, because friendship is not reserved for a lucky few. It is not a gift granted only to extroverts. It is not something only naturally charismatic people experience. Friendship is often the result of emotional skills, skills that can be learned, practiced, strengthened. The ability to listen, the ability to share, the ability to trust gradually, the ability to show curiosity, the ability to accept imperfection, the ability to be emotionally present. These skills create connection, and connection creates friendship. Perhaps the most powerful realization is this. Most people are not looking for perfection. They're looking for comfort. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for someone who makes them feel understood, someone who allows them to be themselves, someone who creates a sense of belonging. That is what friendship truly offers. Not constant agreement, not flawless behavior, not endless entertainment, belonging. And belonging begins when two people lower their defenses enough to be real with each other. Which means the greatest obstacle to friendship is often not other people. It's the barriers we unknowingly build around ourselves, the walls, the assumptions, the fears, the habits, the protective behaviors that once kept us safe, but now keep us isolated. And once those barriers begin coming down, something remarkable happens. The world starts feeling different. Conversations become easier. Connections become deeper. Trust becomes possible. Friendships become more natural. Not because everyone suddenly changes, because you do. Because you become more open, more curious, more emotionally available, more willing to let people see who you really are. And that is often the moment loneliness begins losing its power. The moment genuine friendship finally has room to grow.